Oh, hey, I have an intelligence expert on the show today. Don't tell him. He might be looking for me. Mark Booher, today, live in the lab with Keith Bilous. Yeah, that's me.
Hi, I'm Keith Bilous, and this is Live in the Lab. All right. A little bit of weirdness in front of the camera there for anybody who's watching. So I'm like, hey, where's the button? Where's the button? I can't get it going. How did you go viral on TikTok? You were on America's Got Talent. How much do you get paid to be on AGT? Oh, you didn't get paid. Keith and Steve here in Live in the Lab.
You're a great interviewer. I love it.
48 miles, 48 hours. And not just once. You ain't seen nothing yet. I hit 50 last time, and I'm like, yeah, things are a little different than they were 10 years ago. So trust me, things are to keep. You have no time for the BS that much of society seems to put on the table. Why is that? Like, what you're talking about is real right now. There's just no bullshit here, but it's just real. We brought you in with some Marley. I said, Joseph, let's talk music for a second. You said, well, Keith, oldies, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I've never talked to a sir before. Why are you a sir? In many ways, we're the same story. I came from nothing. You came from nothing. I think the old saying goes that if you want a trophy, you climb Everest. If you want respect, you climb K2. I've built an AI myself, and it's pretty fascinating when you can have a conversation with yourself with your own knowledge. Have you done that before? Why are we rushing to make these tools if they're all going to do is hurt humanity? Does the world need an Oppenheimer moment with AI?
What a fun show.
Oops, forgot the transition. I was just too caught up I was trying to hard for Mark. Mark Booher joining me here today, live in the lab, coming up here in a few moments. You see, I was hiding behind the door over there. I got the wrong screen. Oh man, I had the whole thing prepped too, and just all of a sudden it all so happened so fast. Hey, so this dude, I'm excited today. I'm going to nerd out. If you are into like just cool shit, today's going to be a good show. Yeah, so the guy's like, he trains like probably like SEAL team guys, like I've had a problem all morning. You know, I did the morning show today and I'm trying to say Department of Defense, and all I'm thinking about is Department of Defense. It's been constant since this morning. Nicole and I if you tune into the first few minutes of the morning club, I'm telling you want to talk about unscripted monologue this morning. I had it all planned. You know, I'm here to entertain and inform, and then Department started out. Anyways, Mark Booher joining me here today in the lab. The guy just trains everybody. Counterterrorism expert. We have a counterterrorism expert on the show. That's pretty, at least he's not a terrorism expert. If he was a terrorism expert, it would probably be a problem. I don't know if because we're all about kindness here in the lab. So I'm not sure if we'd invite him in the lab. Maybe we would, because, you know, we are about grace and humanity. So maybe we could find a little bit of goodness. Maybe I really don't know. However, he is a counterterrorism expert, and here's what's pretty cool too. Where did my music go? Here's what's pretty cool too is that he's there we go right there. He's also a lawyer. So you know, the last time I had a lawyer in the lab, we know what happened there. We turned the most boring conversation into the greatest conversation ever. You know, I'm joking with you, Richard. We had a great conversation with my friend Richard, the lawyer, a few months back. So Mark Booher is joining us here today in a couple moments. I want to throw a couple things on the table here today for you guys. I invite you to go back and listen to this morning's Mornings in the Lab show. Why? We have a survivor. What's the coincidence? That Mark Booher is here today? Survivor expert, probably. You know, plus we also had this morning Liz Wilcox. Liz is an email marketing expert. And you're like, yeah, okay, so what? You're thinking, Keith. No, she's on this season's Survivor. Season 46. It's on tonight. So I have an idea for you. Business Athlete Nation. I think what you might want to do is you might want to tune in the morning show today. Just I'll tell you where to go. Go to the last 15 minutes of the show. Yeah, I hooked you the whole show. And then I'm like, yeah, it's the last 15 minutes. Last 15 minutes, Liz comes into the lab, has a great conversation with myself and Nicole. You're going to learn some great shit. So I invite you to go check out that show with Liz. And then, you know, tune into this. And then later today, go watch Survivor with Liz. And then, I got the best idea for you. So I want to invite you to take me to bed with you. Yeah, it's a true story. There's a hook. There's some nice music. So what I'm thinking, the best way you can end your day today is you can crawl up into the sack. Yeah, that's the bed. Just for all you thinking in the gutter, you're all just, nation, you got to get out of the gutter, man. So crawl into bed next to your partner. You say to them, you know what, honey? You know what, partner? And they're going to go, yes, honey. Yes, partner. And you might want to say to them, you know what? We're not going to put on late night television. No, we're not going to put any of that late night stuff on our phones. No, we're going to open up the old YouTuber. Yeah. You know, that little platform that sits on your phone, sits on every device on the planet. And you're going to go into Keith in the Lab. And you're going to look at all these wonderful shows with all these incredible human beings that have come through the lab. And you're going to select one. And I might invite you to check out the one that pops up right in front of you that says, Stuck in a Hot Tub with Dana Carvey. Yeah, it'll make you laugh. It'll keep you entertained. And by the time it gets a little bit boring, at the last 57, 58, 59 minute mark, you go to sleep. Because we are here to entertain and inform you. So I invite you to introduce a new routine to your life and take the Bapl, the chief Bapl, to bed and close your day off with me. So there you have it, guys. Your little invitation to take me to bed with you and all that good stuff. I think at this point, we are going to take this show out of the gutter. And we're going to welcome the man who's walking around his office right now, closing all the doors, frantically getting in front of the microphone saying, holy shit, he's introducing me to the stage right now. He's like, oh my God, the doors are open. Bilous, you can't turn me on the show right now.
Can't, no.
Mark Booher, man, how the hell are you, man? Thanks for coming into the lab. How are you?
Hey, Keith, I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I'm already having a good time and we haven't even started yet. So, man, thanks for having me on.
I really had no intention to take the monologue as long as I did, but the moment I got on that whole, I've been struggling with the P and the F today. You know, it was all defartment all morning, and so there you go. But so I got to tell you,
you're not far off. I mean, that's.
So let me tell you, when you and I first connected, I think that there was some thought, you know, you were going to join the morning show. And then I looked a little deeper at you. I'm like, nah, I don't think our conversation is appropriate for the morning show because I want to have some interesting conversation with you. And my morning show is about getting people started in the day and some, you know, positive, accountable conversation. No, man, I want to talk about fighting the bad guys and shooting people and blowing shit up. I'm like, no, we got to talk in the afternoon for that show.
Yeah.
So hence I'm like, no, let's sit down for an hour and a little more, whatever you got. And I really want to dig into your story. Dude, like Nicole says to me this morning as I was introducing you, she goes, he sounds like a pretty lazy guy.
Well, my wife thinks so. I mean, she would tell you.
So Mark, where do you, let's back it right up. Where do you join us from today, first of all?
So I'm in Arkansas.
Okay, Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
you are a lawyer now, correct?
Well, I'm licensed, but I haven't practiced law in a hot minute. It's been about 10 years since I went into a courtroom.
Oh, yeah. So what kind of lawyer are you, or were you, or could you be?
I was. Well, I mean, it's America. I guess you could be anything, right? That's what they tell us. But I was a deputy district attorney.
Okay.
So I tried my best to round up bad guys.
Yeah.
And deal with them appropriately.
That's a good answer.
I did that for 6 years. Mm-hmm.
Oh, so how fulfilling was that?
It was great. I mean, I started out, you know, when I was 19 as a soldier, and really that's all I really ever wanted to be. And that's really me through and through. So I had to take a detour, and I separated from the service for a while due to some injury and some other things. And so I didn't really have a plan B. So I finished college, went to law school, and became, I decided pretty much within my third year that I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore, which is not uncommon, by the way. Yeah. Most people by their third year of law school are trying to figure out how not to be a lawyer when they graduate. But I went ahead and I had clerked in the prosecutor's office. And so when I graduated, luckily there was a spot, they picked me up, and it was very fulfilling. I loved it. Outside of the military, that was probably the most camaraderie, close-knit group, and really sense of purpose and a feeling of being tied to my community that I've ever had outside of the military. So it was a great hitch. Really loved it.
I love when I speak with my American colleagues, American friends, family members, and y'all.
Hey, yeah, you're already speaking the lingo. All right.
Y'all, so you don't have to use at the end of some of your sentences.
I might need a class on how to do that. You might have to teach me the right pronunciation. How's it go?
Eh?
And how do you use that?
So y'all might think that you're soldiers, eh?
Okay.
Let me back it up.
Got it.
Let me throw my question on the table or my comment.
Okay.
I've always been fascinated by the pride and the patriotism of my American colleagues, friends, family members. When you proudly said, "I always wanted to be," and the word, a soldier. Like that, the meaning of that word, it's a powerful word. It's a word of intention. You intentionally use it. There's no pause.
Right. Mm.
Let's hang on that for a few moments. That's the kind of conversations I like to have here in the lab.
Okay.
You woke up, you wanted to be a soldier. What does that mean to Mark?
For me, it just wasn't even a question of whether I was going to do it or not. It was just when. Like, so not a question of if, it was just when. I mean, as far as I can tell, I mean, I think I'm the third generation of my family to have served. I mean, I've got ancestors and relatives that,
Yes.
we go far enough, we're going to have some kind of warrior or soldier or somebody, in our lineage. But within my immediate family, my dad, my grandpa, great grandpa, and I knew I was going to do it. I don't know. It was just baked in the cake when I came out. I don't know, just from the time I was a kid playing soldier with toy guns. My friends that were older than me, when they graduated, they went off to the Army, and it was just something that I was in the pipeline to do. At the same time, this was back before there was YouTube or
Mhm.
Your ability to research things or to know what you were getting into were not as great as they are today. So I didn't really know what I was getting myself into or if I would like it, but it turned out I mean, I loved it. And yeah, it was a great hitch for me. A lot of life lessons, very formative years, and I wouldn't take them back for anything.
When you say you didn't know what you're getting yourself into, so I know you don't mean that in a literal sense, because I have to assume just through family and so forth that you had kind of an idea.
Yeah, sure.
But you also make that statement. So there is something within that that's meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you learn from that whole idea of, I didn't know what I was getting into until I actually got into it? And it was one of those, holy shit, so this is what it is kind of things, right? That's what I mean by that. Because, so explain that to me, Mark.
Yeah, I think there's not just the military. I think there's several things in life where, I mean, they have to be experienced. You can get knowledge in a book. You can watch videos and get knowledge, but you have to do it to get the experience. And as you cross into that threshold, there's still the unknown. It's like, okay, well, my father had this experience. My grandfather had a different experience, but what is my experience going to be? I mean, my grandfather was a infantryman in World War II. His experience in the 40s with the Army in the 40s was very different from my experience in the 90s and the 2000s, right? So, that's what I meant. It's like, what version of the Army was I going to enter into? What were the places I was going to go? What were the things that were going to be done to me or happen to me, or the opportunities I would have, that kind of thing.
Oh man, I now that you put it that way, I think about somebody entering the military today, the tech involved, the robots involved, the way you're killing or getting the bad guys is very different than it was when your grandpa did. Like the entire experience of military warfare today, or being a strategic operator, and some of the work you have done, like probably 360 degrees different today in many ways, is it not?
Very, very different. So I originally came into the mid 90s. I was 19. And then I was in for a few years.
Would have been before the Iraqi kind of. So I'm just thinking myself here. What kind of theater we were around in kind of the world, and what was happening in the world, and CNN broadcasting the first war in 24/7, right? So you're part of that, Mark.
So after I went in after Desert Storm, but before 9/11, and very different, geopolitical context there. And then I was in for a few years, and then I got out because of some injuries and other things. And I had a 20-year break in service.
Wow.
I could have already retired, and then before I went back in, and I could tell you night and day difference. I mean, night and day difference. Different uniform, different camo patterns, different equipment. I mean, some of it was the same, right? Some of it was the same. The general, framework, the rank structure, some of the culture and everything, but it's still very different. And so it was a little bit of a culture shock when I came back in and got reacclimated to it. So yeah, I mean, it's like Heraclitus said, that ancient philosopher, nobody steps into the same river twice, right? Life is a constant change. It's a constant ebb and flow.
Yeah.
And you have to adjust. You have to be flexible and really go with it. We got plenty of people that try to go against it. And,
Yeah.
usually that rarely turns out to your benefit. But
Yeah. It's
yeah,
true.
so that's my experience.
Do you find yourself, Mark? I know I sometimes, wish I was born later because I'm a tech nerd. So I'm like, oh man, I wish I was born later so I could play with some of this new technology in the next 30, 40 years before, or 60 years before I'm dead. Right. So do you ever wish that, oh man, I wish I was the young guy coming into the military now because I could do some really cool shit with some of this new technology? Or were you pretty satisfied with your experience with some of the rudimentary or analog? I'm trying to be cryptic with how.
No. Actually, I'm kind of the opposite. I kind of yearn for an older time.
Okay.
I mean, I would almost rather go back in time if I could. I mean,
it's Mark's like, I want to go pack my muzzle.
Well, I don't know about that far. I mean, I do appreciate these strides we've made in medicine and
yes, of course,
and especially battlefield operations and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of more of an old school kind of guy. So I tend to I like to have kind of gone back and experienced some things that maybe my ancestors did. But the fact is that we're here now. We have to live now and make our impact now.
Mm-hmm. So you must look at the world today, probably similar through the lens that I do, looking at we are actually in the Cold War of 2024, aren't we? Like when you look at the geopolitical climate of the world and perhaps your experience in the military, and just perhaps your experience, just looking around you, it's hard not to see the world through that lens, is it not?
Well, it's certainly, the narrative is certainly being framed that way. That's certainly being fed to us.
Yes.
It is interesting, when things do kind of seem cyclical. I think history more is cyclical than it is linear.
Yes.
And I think that, in my opinion, and I didn't always think that way, but the older I get, the more I tend to lean that way. When I first came in, it definitely was, we were on the tail end of the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
We were still very much structured in a peer-to-peer conflict, or that's kind of what the armed forces were oriented towards. And then you had 9/11 dealing with counterinsurgencies and things like that. And so you had a whole 20-year, at least, a cycle of the way that operations were ran, the culture, the structure, and everything like that. And then now, and when I came back in, we were kind of on the tail end of kind of being postured towards defeating or trying to counter insurgencies. But now things really are the military's pivoting away from that and trying to kind of go back to its roots, so to say, its bread and butter of being a force that can handle a peer or near peer adversary. So it's interesting that some of the things when I first came back in 2018 that we weren't talking about, we weren't really training for or anything like that, that I had experienced back in the 90s are like slowly I'm seeing it come back. So it's kind of weird. It's almost like time traveling, you know what I mean? Because in your mind, you're still that 20-year-old kid, right? And then it seems like I'm transported for, I'm in a new uniform with new guys, definitely younger than me, but you're looking around reading the tea leaves and you're like, yeah, I've heard this song before. I think I've been here before. It's kind of weird.
Mark, you say that the military is shifted prerogatives from, counterinsurgents and insurgents type terrorism tactics to back to peer-to-peer nation fighting in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
What has all the terrorists, the insurgents said, okay, we're done. This cycle of history is done. We're all packing up. We're going to go back to our homeland and we're going to let the nations all do their thing. And then when there's a gap in the world, we're going to come make noise again. Like explain that thought process or how that works.
So terrorism it's a tactic. So you that could get lost really easily when you watch the news cycle, because there's, typically anybody we don't like or anyone we disagree with or that does something, we basically call them a terrorist, whether or not they're actually engaging in a terrorist act. But that is the thing, is like terrorism is a tactic of war. It's one of many. So it's not that the armed forces are abandoning their capability or their capacity to fight against, those who use terrorism as a tactic, but the I think the army or the military realized that they had kind of put too much into that. They had kind of become hyper focused on counterinsurgencies and terrorism, and that they had neglected some of their old school kind of bread and butter type things. For instance, I bumped into a guy that was a major in the Marine Corps. And of course, my opinions don't reflect the,
No,
the official paradigm of the DoD, but I mean, this is just kind of my take on what I see, within context. So I was talking, he was a major, he was an infantry officer, and he'd been to Iraq several times. I'm sure he'd been to Afghanistan. I can't remember. But the point was, he was just telling me that, I ran into him at an event up in Kansas, and they have the War College there. So he was there kind of getting his education there at the War College in Fort Leavenworth. And he's telling me, he goes, yeah, I mean, he goes, we're starting to kind of get back to what we as Marines supposed to do, which is amphibious assaults. He's like, we kind of had abandoned that. We were so hyper focused in Iraq, right? Not a lot of amphibious assaults and things going there. The Marines that's what they do. That's, I mean, among many things, but that's like their specialty, right? Amphibious assaults, things like that. He's like, we'd kind of gotten away with that from that, and weren't as sharp on that anymore because we became so hyper focused on that. And so now he's like, we had kind of diminished our capability in those areas. Not that we couldn't do it, not that we still didn't train for those things. It's just we weren't white hot on that like we used to be. So he was like, yeah, we're starting to kind of pivot to that way. And same thing with the Army, with the tactics and things like, the scenarios. Oftentimes you'll have a train up cycle, and you make sure you go to your ranges, you get qualified on your weapons or requalify on them. You make sure that's good. You get all your licensing and accreditation on whatever, the boxes you have to check, right? That just on how to run the force. And then at some point it's going to culminate in a type of field exercise. And that exercise might be a couple days. It could be a month long, or who knows, right? But there'll be typically a backstory. There's going to be a scenario. They may even have role players out there, villages and things like that. But I mean, pretty much all of the training was just kind of geared for that counterinsurgency kind of thing, for most exercises. I'm not saying every single thing, right? And so we're definitely kind of, I think, the guys in the head shed that evaluate training and push that out and, decide what the standards are going to be for the military. I think they've been looking at that as they see threats for Russia, real or imagined, threats from China, real or imagined, in Iran, and taking lessons that they're finding, in Ukraine and elsewhere, and saying, hey man, we got to get ready for this stuff in the event that we need to.
So again, excuse me, opinions, thoughts of yours, not of any officials anywhere in the world. When 9/11 happened, there was discourse around the fact that maybe American officials missed it, paying too much attention to everything else, and missed this idea and this of insurgencies and people attacking the United States, because they were too focused on peer-to-peer military operations, old school military operations. Could that happen again, where we're now turning our attention to nation states again, China, Russia, et cetera, North Korea? Does that fear perhaps come back onto the table, which is, okay, well, we're all paying attention over there, so this might happen again? Or do you think we, as North Americans, have learned from that incident in September of 9/11?
Well, it depends on which way you want to take that. There's the official story, the narrative, and then we could put the tinfoil hats on and go into like crazy, weird, bizarro world, and at this point, the world has become so crazy. It's like, it's almost like, man, everything's on the table. Like, how do you discount anything anymore? It's like, a few years ago, some of the folks that were called conspiracy experts, some of those things, borne out to be, well, maybe they weren't so far-fetched after all. But all that aside, I think for me, when I look at it, it looks like that 9/11 really was the anomaly. That is the one that everyone focuses on because it was a real watershed moment in our history. It impacted our lives, everybody, right? The way you open a bank account, the way we check our luggage in at the airport, and the way we board plane. I mean, all of it,
You changed society. There's no
yeah, it
question
did.
about
It did. And there's, it's kind of was Pandora's box, right? I mean, it just kind of opened up this whole, can of shit, so to say.
it.
But
Yeah, no, absolutely. It
yeah,
is.
but it's still in terms of terrorism and the tactics that are used by terrorists, it still was the anomaly. It was kind of the black swan event. Most of that was kind of a strategic strike, right? But most of terrorism or terrorism that you see are kind of more on the tactical level. It is we are shooting up the school. We are attacking
Yes.
voting, where they're registered voters to vote because we don't want them to support the current regime scheme,
Mhm.
right? Or
Mhm.
we want to attack the credibility of the host government, so we're going to conduct terrorism attacks, those types of
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
So, or even here in America with the so-called lone wolf attacks that we don't hear as much about right now, but that's kind of a perennial thing. We'll see those attacks again, just like we did in the from 2000, mid 2000s on. They seem to quell, a little around, I guess, 2018, 2019. That's kind of when the tide started turning, I think, if I got my facts right. But yeah, we'll see those again. I mean, terrorism is a perennial thing because it's a tactic. It's not
Mhm.
an ideology, right? I mean, most terrorists who conduct those tactics will subscribe to some kind of ideology, but the terrorist attack itself is not an ideology. It's a tactic.
Mark, did the word terrorism, has Western culture lost control of the narrative around that word? Because you've spent you spent a bunch of time emphasizing what it really means.
Hmm.
And you see what I'm getting at here, right? Because
Yeah.
you've been constantly saying it's a tactic,
Yeah.
it's not this. It's almost as if when 911 happened and then we wanted to throw everything under the banner of terrorism,
Hmm.
right? Am I correct with that, Mark?
I think that's accurate. I think even now there's really no consensus among like if that I'm aware of. I mean, last when I looked, I wasn't able to find this. I could be wrong.
Hmm.
I don't know everything, but
What?
I don't. Yeah, I know. I know. Now I don't tell my kids that. The kids don't know that.
We are recording this, so
Yeah.
my kids think I do know everything. So shush, man.
Yeah. So, but amongst like the alphabet agencies, the federal agencies and
Yeah, yeah.
things like that, there's no consensus. There's no
Interesting.
uniform definition of what terrorist is.
Yeah, yeah.
So everybody has their own working definition. And then, the news, the media, I think everybody knows, especially within the last year, that the media is not there to inform you. They're not there to get to the truth of things. They're there to sell. They're there to make revenue, right? They're a business. They want to sell ad space. They want to sell copy. They're going to make money. So, they'll sensationalize anything. They will dumb things down, and then, if they get something wrong, they'll retract it on the back page that nobody sees, but they're piping so much information to us now because of these things that they get something wrong on a Tuesday, they'll retract it on Friday, nobody sees it, nobody cares because they've already moved on to the new thing that's outraging everybody that they're going to get on anyway. So yeah, but as citizens that are trying to get informed, that are trying to take steps to protect themselves or just know what the hell's going on, I mean, it certainly makes it harder, because it's not only do you have to sift through the fog of what's going on, you have to weigh the sources that you use very heavily.
Mhm.
I think at one time, and I hope that's over, a few years ago, everybody thought, hey, I'm on this side. We're so segmented now. It's like you go find your news source based on what your leanings are. I don't care if you're on the right or left.
Mhm.
And that's kind of seemed to be, hey man, if you were on the right, you watch these news
Yes.
platforms. If you're on the left, you watch these, and never do the two cross, right? And I mean, I've literally sat and watched a story on one outlet and then flipped over to the other one to watch them cover the same story. And man, I mean, it's like, did I even see the same thing? Right? Because I mean, these people reporting, on a speech the president did or said or whatever. It's like, were they even there? I mean, because I watched the speech, I saw what was said, but then you see the news reports of it, and it's like very fast and loose with the facts, right? That's my opinion on it. So I hope people are realizing that, for the most part, these people they don't really care about us. They don't care about you. They don't care about you being informed. They care about making money, right? Because they're a business. And I don't have anything against someone trying. have a business too for profit. So of course I'm trying to generate revenue too. So I don't hold that against anyone, but just make sure that you as a consumer understand that you understand that when you're consuming those news stories, to understand that you might need to take it with a grain of salt.
Well, it's interesting to hear your point of view on that, because I've made no bones about the fact that I'm here to entertain and inform.
Yeah.
Entertain and inform. And my ambition is, by showing up every single day, you're going to build trust with me.
Mm-hmm.
Then the ambition is also to present information to my audience that I believe is sourceful and true, and then people will trust that with me and through me. But I make no bones that I'm here to entertain and inform. And I don't have an agenda. I really don't. I don't. My agenda is humanity and kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Which segues to my question with you. How do you, Mark Booher, manage and balance being a soldier, being an American, being a human, knowing what reading, hearing about conspiracy, looking at facts, looking at alternative facts? How do you, as Mark Booher, just reconcile some days your beliefs? Do you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm going to assume it's easy for somebody like yourself to be ridiculously and extremely cynical.
Yeah.
Like how you can't be. Everything you read, everything you see, you're questioning it.
Mm-hmm.
Like how do you find positivity and light in the day?
Well, for me, it comes down to my values, right? I have my values that I stick by. That's the governor on my machine, so to say, on my operating system.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what guides me. And I evaluate what I see, what I do based on those values. And ultimately, you understand, like I said, that these people, in these news media outlets, they understand what gets clicks. They understands what drives people. And it's, hey, let's, as the saying, I didn't make this up, but I heard, if it bleeds, it leads, right? I mean, it's the sensationalism. That's what drives it. So I already know, walking into, if I pick up my phone to look at my news feed, I already know that there's people there that are putting headlines and stories up that are based to get me stirred up emotionally. I mean, that's first and foremost. So I already know that going into it, right? So it's not something that catches me flat-footed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but I also take note of, what really is making impacts on me on a personal level, right? I mean, the national headlines are the ones that sucks all the oxygen out of the room. And yeah, there's plenty of things that come out of DC that affects my life, but I'm much more impacted by my local politics.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I'm very much, and in the end, I could say there's a lot of things that just don't, they could stir me up. They could get me emotionally invested. But at the end of the day, I'm not saying ignore the news, but there's a lot of the news that really doesn't affect me. I'm going to see my kids at the end of the day, and I'm going to hug them. I'm going to pet my dogs. I'm going to hang out with my buddies.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on trip. For now, tomorrow could be a different story. But for right now, I try to stay grounded and say, hey, man, what is this doing to my life right now at this moment, other than getting me emotionally stirred up?
Yeah. Yeah. Good on you for that.
Yeah.
So Mark, let's get into some of the fun stuff, frankly. So what did you do in the military? What kind of operations did you participate in? And what was where did you roll your sleeves up? Where did you get dirty? And we're all ears here in the lab, my friend.
Yeah. So I've got about 12 years of service in the active duty and the National Guard component.
Mm-hmm.
So that time was split between being in the intelligence field and the infantry field. So I loved both of those fields. I mean, I think, for me, I think my heart kind of leans more on the infantry side. I really love that. It's definitely more physical. It's got more of the things that more physical challenges, right? But anytime you have a physical challenge, there's a mental component to it too,
Yes.
even an emotional opponent.
Yes.
So component. So having opportunities to be challenged, to learn leadership, to be mentored by some of the most amazing people I've ever met on the planet, and I've been across the world, and I have found in the military for me. I'm not saying it's for
Yeah.
everybody. I'm not
Yeah.
saying you can't find it outside of that, but for
Yes.
me.
Yes.
So yeah, so I came in the 90s. I was a very skinny kid. I was a sickly kid. I was a very weak kid. And when I was joining, people are like, "What are you doing, man? You're gonna break in half. You can't do this. You got flat feet. You got a bad back. What are you gonna do?"
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I just learned that with a certain amount of grit that you can develop. And the military gave me an ability to find that in myself. I did not know that about myself when
Yeah.
I went in.
That's
You know,
self-belief, eh?
yeah, yeah, I did not have that. When I came in, like, for all the things that, it's like anything you can have a love and hate relationship with something. There's plenty about the military that I don't like
Mhm.
and that does bug me, that I don't like to participate in. But on the whole, it gave me that ability to find that in myself and to bring it to the surface. Resources that I did not know I had, because I really was kind of a piece of shit kid, man. I was in trouble. I was just kind of running the streets. My poor parents, I had very good parents, but they just did not have the capacity to control me. Um, I was a wild kid, very irresponsible. I quit everything I had ever started, very non-committal. And so that's why crossing that threshold was a big deal. Because once you sign on that line, man, I mean, it was like, you know, you can take that back, especially at the time, right? So, and they shaved our heads, loaded us in those cattle trucks, and bust us up to meet our drill sergeants, where our training area, that was a real eye opener for me. But what I found is that through time, like I said, it gave me the opportunity, right? And that's the big thing, right? The army didn't make that, because there were plenty of people in the military you'll find that really are not people you would want to associate with, right? They're people that are just like in any walk of life, right?
Mhm.
You'll find that too. So the military doesn't make people into anything. What it does is it provides it's a conduit. It provides them an opportunity to do something with themselves, right? To challenge themselves, to seek adversity willingly, and to overcome it. And then as a result, to build your character and a new identity, to forge a new identity that then can go forward and take on bigger obstacles, bigger challenges, right? And it certainly didn't happen overnight. I mean, I still had some of that punk kid that was still in me. It took him a long time to kind of get that out out of me. I was very immature, but it helped. It started me on that path, right?
Were there some moments while you were in those early days of training, in your head you were still that punk kid fighting the maturity that was being forced on you? Where it's like, okay, fuck boy, you got to grow up, man. You got to get your shit together. And were you fighting that, or were you willingly accepting it's time to grow up and it's time to get my shit together?
Yeah, I mean, like they say, with kids really do crave structure and discipline.
Yeah.
We've got so many parents that want to be their kid's best friend, provide no structure, let them, and you can look at the society, and the result of that, which is very negative. But I mean, kids do crave structure, they crave discipline, in the right amount. And so for me, not that my parents didn't try to provide discipline or anything like that, but just I'd never had any demands on me like that
Mhm,
before,
mhm.
like the military. I mean, my parents couldn't have put that kind of demand on me. So to be there, to have in that environment, I really took to it. It was it was surprising to me how fast I took to it. And I didn't really even realize what was going on. I mean, I wish now when I look back in hindsight, there's even more things that I could have done and pursued that I wish I would have.
Oh yeah.
But I've had a good hitch, you know what I mean? Like, you can't do everything, right? Um, one of my company commanders, he had been an enlisted guy, and then he became in Germany, and then he went on to become an officer, and he was my company commander. And I was getting ready to leave Germany, and I was trying to kind of think about what my path was going to be. And when he was enlisted, you know, he had gone through Ranger school. He went to Special Forces, and he was a Special Forces medic when he was enlisted, you know. So he had done all kinds of stuff. He's a combat vet, all this kind of stuff. Super cool dude. And we were just sitting there, just kind of shooting the shit one day. And he was just like, I was asking him, I was like, you know, is there anything left undone? Is there anything you wish you could have done that you didn't do? And he was like, yeah, man. He goes, I always would, man. He goes, to this day, it bugs me that I didn't go out for Delta Force. He goes, I really wish I would have tried out and gone and done that, you know, which is like, that is the elite tier.
How about you? Did you do any elite forces like Delta Force?
No, I mean, I wish that would be my big regret. Now, I did get to, I met a lot of those guys. I've got to train with some of those guys. I had some of those guys mentor me, and I learned a lot. But that was around the time, by the time I kind of got eligible to do some of those programs, was when I got injured and got out. So I had a 20-year break. So by the time I came back into the guard component, and you know, I'm in a different stage, married with kids, not really at a point where I was willing to up in my life, and probably, you know, I have done some physical things and gone to some schools and things like that were really cool. But to go back on that level, I mean, I'm just not in a place where I could do it.
You spoke about your injury. Can you speak about your injury, Mark?
Yeah. So I started developing knee problems, and so I got to where I really couldn't run anymore.
Yeah.
And then I started having sciatica. I started having all kinds of back issues and things like that. I still have some of those injuries, but it took me 20 years, and I bet I spent thousands and thousands of dollars going to medical doctors, chiropractors, surgeries, all kinds of stuff, to not only because I wanted to go back in, right? I mean, ultimately, yeah, it was to alleviate pain and so I could be active, but ultimately it was always, I wanted to go back in and serve in some capacity. And so again, I mean, in 2018, I'm in my mid-40s and I'm having those same conversations I had when I was 19. Like, you're going to come back in, man. You're, only now you're too old, you're broke, you have all those things. But again, I mean, you really are capable of doing more than you think. You just have to, you have to test yourself. You have to put yourself out there. And if you fail, your failure is your best mentor. Failure really is the best teacher. It will tell you what you did wrong. And if you know what right looks like, right, you can adjust your behavior and you can go back for it.
I was quickly corrected by a guest who came through the lab. One of the great privileges I get, Mark, is every single day I meet exceptional human beings like yourself, and I learn something every single day. It's like going to school every day, right? And I had somebody come through the lab who clearly shares many of the same philosophies you have, I have, and he's like, Keith, no, it's not failure, man. It's not failure. I'm like, oh, he goes, it's another F word. I was like, oh, he goes, it's feedback.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I like that. And I've really embraced that word. And because I set the lab up, Mark, with that mentality of what do you do in a lab, Mark? You experiment, you attempt. And then, just that whole idea of being in a lab in many ways gives you permission to, I used to use the word fail, but no, what you're actually doing is you're experimenting, you're attempting, and then you're getting feedback and you're improving, you're iterating, right? So I like that mind shift. So whenever I have guests coming in the lab and I find they use the word failure, I offer up the idea of maybe we position it and we try to introduce the word feedback into our world a little more often than failure. I think it's a positive way of saying something that we all know is happening, but just a different way of reframing it.
Yeah. I mean, the mental component, you cannot be understated. It cannot be discounted. I mean, the mental aspect of your self-talk, what goes on, the conversations that you have between your ears are so vital. That's definitely something that I'm still learning. I'm still trying to improve upon, but I really wish, even when I was younger, I mean, that took me some time to really realize just how important the mental game is to life and everything.
Yes. Infantry. So dumb it down for me and audience. So guns and grenades and are we talking, so infantry, we're talking like out in the theater with weapons, right?
Yep, that's right. The colloquial term and a term of infection is they call them the grunts, right? The grunt. That is the true grunt, right? That's the guy that's loaded with his pack, and he's moving out on foot, and he's seizing key terrain, occupying it, or search and destroy, or whatever the mission is, right? That's the war fighter, right? Now, I know there's guys in tanks, there's guys that are doing artillery. They also part of, we're in a combined arms kind of military now, so they have a role to play, but ultimately everything supports the infantry war fighter.
I love this because we started our show with you talking about being a soldier, right? And we're working towards the end of our discussion. Well, it doesn't have to be, but we're working towards the end of it, which is we're talking infantry. We're talking a grunt. We're talking somebody on the ground, boots on the ground. We're talking knocking on doors and searching and destroying.
Kicking them down. Yeah.
When I hear that,
yeah,
that to me is a soldier.
Yeah.
So when I look at you and as I've been going through my conversation with you, I'm fully embracing what that means, listening to you. And I get it. And I can see, Mark Booher, that you're a soldier. Because when I hear you even talking about, I was 42 and I want to go back, I want to get back in it. Right. That's just the terms you're using, right? Just that idea of I want to get back in it. And somebody's saying, fuck, man, really? You're 40, man. But yet there's something in your blood that you're like, I want to go knock some fucking doors down, and I want to go go missions, right? Right.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, dude, you said it. You said it. Yeah. That's what it's about.
There's something. So let me ask you this: like, what scares you? You're not scared of death because you're walking to fire every single day when you're going to theater. What scares Mark Booher?
I think the sense of experienced regret. That there was something there that I could have done that maybe that I may either through a poor decision miss out on, or that I excused myself, because I mean, again, I try to cultivate this mental attitude, but I'm not perfect. I have down days, I have people that I look up to that have done way more than I have, and the realization that I'm never, that some of it by choice, like I said, because of life situations, right? I have responsibilities now. So, I can't go pursue those things that may drive my heart because I have responsibilities. And I don't say that in the way that I feel bad about them. I chose those responsibilities. I chose to have a family, and I could not live without my family. So it's not, don't take it the wrong way that I feel like it's a missing out. But
I understand completely what you mean. Yeah. It's called growing up, isn't it? It's called we grow up.
Yeah, exactly. So, what I'm trying to do is maximize my becoming, at the level that I can, and make as much of an impact, because eventually it does have a shelf life on it. When I'm 70, I'm not going to be humping a ruck out there with a gun in my hand. But as I get older, and I do have lessons, and I do have positions, or I get into positions where I can have an impact and influence. I try to maximize my lessons, avail myself of as many opportunities as I can, and then pass those on to the younger guys, to continue, to kind of, I don't know when that point is. I mean, I can see myself going through it in a certain stage, but all of us, whether you're in the military or not, you should move, from the warrior archetype to the sage, right? To where you are now becoming a mentor, just like I had mentors, and you're passing that along, and you're helping forge the next person. It doesn't matter what your walk of life is, I mean, I'm in it, literally, right? In the infantry, but that warrior archetype that exists in business, in the schoolroom, where at schoolhouse, the hospital, wherever you are. And so, not to run from it, don't hide it, but, push yourself to maximize your experiences. But then, it's not just for you, it's to pass on. Cause again, like I said, history is cyclical. It's not linear. So you're born, you grow, you age, you die. People do it. Governments do it, societies do it. We're always in this continual cycle, and you never know exactly where in that cycle you are. But I know I'm closer to the end of it than I was at the beginning, right? So,
Mark, every good host wants to make sure they get to the next appointment on time. So I want to be respectful of your time. I have time to go into overtime. Do you?
I do. I've got another interview after this, but yeah, I've got a little bit more time. I'm having a blast. So yeah.
So then I'm gonna do this with you then. So we're gonna wrap up in a couple of minutes, and then I'm gonna ask you straight right now. Will you come back for a part 2 with me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because so sorry, Christian Espinosa, I gotta call you out again. I had a guy on my show last week, and you talk about regrets. I went in knowing that it was gonna probably go longer than an hour. I looked a little bit of his preview, and man, the guy's like climbed 8,000 mountains. He's run like 1,000,000 ultra marathons, done like 1,000 triathlons. Like the guy is like the ultimate lazy guy. Like he just fucking sits around, and so he gets on my show, and I'm obviously being very much tongue in cheek and full of sarcasm right now. But he gets on my show, and I'm like, "Oh, an hour's up. Can you stay for a few more hours? Can we Rogan this?" And he's like, "Keith, I gotta go." I'm like, "Okay, well, I've just coined the Espinosa effect, where I actually need to, like have the Geneva Convention, these things where like your momentum. I'm like, so now I have this Espinosa effect. Like Christian, you got to sponsor my show, man, because I'm calling you out every single time. When I know conversations are going to go into overtime or lengthy hours, I got to just schedule it properly for you and me. So, because this is awesome. I haven't even gotten to now. I haven't even gotten to, Mark's story today, your Baratus Defense, counterinsurgency, counterterrorism. So let's do this. Let's let the audience and Keith hang on today. Let's walk towards wrapping up right now. How can folks find Mark? What do you want to make sure somebody knows today at the end of our first hour together? Yeah, so we can have you back for hour 2 and 3 and 4. How do we wrap it up, my friend? I'm going to throw it to you to wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you. The best place to reach me or to see what I'm doing is on the website. There's 2 things I'd like to leave you with. So Baratus Defense is our company. It's www. Do we even have to say that anymore? Like everybody knows a website starts with www, but it's Baratus Defense, BARRITUS defense.com. That's got where our classes are, where we're traveling to, blog posts, all that, what we offer, that type of thing. And then the other project I'm really wanting to make a push on is our podcast, which is Pearl Snap Tactical podcast. So we there's a lot of things that we want to cover in our courses that we can't. So we try to cover those in the podcast. And so it dovetails really good with our offerings, but it's standalone. So if you're interested kind of in that tactical acumen and also kind of cultivating a warrior type mindset or what that even means, or if that's even applicable to you, you'll find it all there at Pearl Snap Tactical Podcast. So it doesn't have a website, but it is on Apple, Spotify, wherever you go, it's on all the players.
Excellent. Before I let you go, I got to quickly do this. Has anybody told you that you look, oh my goodness, I'm just looking at you right now again.
Hold on. Before you do this, every time it needs to be somebody cool, because every time someone tells me I look like someone, it's never anybody cool.
Dude, you look cool. So you know what? I'm actually not even going to show you. This is going to be the hook for episode 2.
Okay.
This is a cool actor, cool TV show. He was the bad guy in it. He was kicking ass. Like I'm going to suspect, actually.
Tell me more.
I'm going to suspect you guys are going to relate. His name's Joseph Sikora. So I should show him on this. I should show him. Yeah, you should check him out. I'm
gonna look that dude up.
Here, I'm gonna throw it on the screen right now here, actually. So he's a tough ass dude. Here we go. Share screen. So Nation, if you got to check out the video later, but here's Mark Baratus. He was and the show Power, he was a badass, man. You got to watch the show, and you got to watch Joseph Sikora in it, because
I remember him from Ozark. He was in Ozark.
He was in that too. Exactly. He was in that too. Yeah. So he's not nerdy. He's cool like you, man.
All right. Well, I was hoping for Brad Pitt, but I'll take him.
No, I got Brad Pitt.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. It's your show. You can have
This is my show.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Mark, did you have fun? I did.
Dude, I had a blast. I can't believe an hour went by. But
I know. And as you were talking, I'm going, okay, this was good. Like, I'm like, because I have like 1,000 other questions in my little skull here to go at you at. So listen, I'm going to put you back in the green room. I'm going to say goodbye to the audience, and then I'm going to come walk you out. Okay.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Let's just do this. I need to put some tunes on for Nation. Do that there. We're going to do that there. Put me up there. Hey, that was awesome. Oh, I don't want to tinkle this out. I need to get some energy in here. There we go. That's our starter. All right, Pearl Snap Tactical. That's how you're going to find Mark. And Baratus Defense. That's how you're going to find Mark. I hope you guys enjoyed. Listen, I know you enjoyed the chat. And this is one of those chats where I'm telling you, take me to bed, put it on, listen to Keith and Mark talk, and good conversation is going to get you thinking about stuff and so forth. All right, so I'm out of here. I'm going to go walk Mark out of the doors. He's going to come back for episode 2 and 3. I know he is for sure. I'm going to plan an extra week of like extra awesome shows with Spinoza and Mark and so forth. So we're going to plan that coming up. Tune in tomorrow morning, Mornings in the Lab. We have Trisha Edwards, unstuckable creator. Trisha's awesome. You come join us tomorrow, 7 o'clock Central, 8 o'clock Eastern. That would be 5 o'clock Pacific time for those of you over on the left coast. And if you're in Arkansas, I think that's in a different time zone altogether. So that's where you can find us. But you know where to find me, here at noon and Mornings in the Lab. I'll see you tomorrow.